I'm not sure what building processing is in. I think it's Hilton.
I think it's in the basement of Hilton. I was on the second floor of Hilton.
Yeah. And any samples that came to my building, SDFB, we also had a huge processing center.
So they must have an amazing courier system to bring samples from the main processing.
I know downtown is pretty automated, I think. They have robots that send them to different areas.
But like St. Mary's is a completely separate campus from the downtown area. It's like at least a mile away, and they have the tube system running for a mile. So when that goes down, I mean, it's a problem. It's a problem. But my lab would receive a lot of samples from Kelly's lab, from SDSC too. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Once you were done with your testing, were the samples stored off-site then?
My building, SDFB, had its own storage area. Mayo had their own computer program, LIS program. They made it themselves. They had a specific program called Biochem, I think. What they use for their storage information, and you could locate any sample anywhere ever.
Wow.
It was amazing.
How long did you keep them?
Depending on the test. There were several that were kept for 14 months, frozen.
My lab would only keep samples for 7 days.
Yeah, generally 7 to 10 days.
Yeah.
In our experience with them.
Yeah, my lab and then they would just throw them out. Yeah. So like when my machines would go down, which the 2 Triterus machines that I ran were the only machines that could run those 3 tests, and they went down and they were down for almost a whole week. We had severe issues, and what happened is that we put all the samples into storage, and just because it took so long, we were so backed up on the sample flow that a lot of them did get tossed, and it was very hectic. It was awful.
My lab did a lot of body fluid, so we have to keep those for 14 months because of that. Yeah.
How would you compare the pace of testing at Mayo with what you're currently experiencing at the clinical site? Because I would think they don't do too many stat type tests, do they? Do you ever have stats to process?
It's different.
How's your volume?
My lab had a 24-hour turnaround time. We never had any stat tests that came in. So sample comes in, and we had to do work lists. There was they called Soft Lab was their actual LIS system. You could do a work list that shows you how long it's been in your system, if there's something that needs to be worked on. But we didn't ever have any stat tests. Of course, we had doctors calling all the time, but you know.
Now, why did you ever have to enter a result? Didn't they have these analyzers interfaced to SOP? Or how come people were having to hand enter test results?
The only thing, in my lab at least, the only thing we hand entered was if we had to do manual dilutions. Everything else was just auto resulted.
We didn't hand enter. It was like the computer would calculate everything, but then I would get a printout of the results from the test and the calibrators and the controls, and I would have to validate that it was a valid run by there was like a correlating worksheet to make sure that everything was within, all the calibrators and controls were within the reference range, and then another tech would come and press the send button on those results. But if they were not within reference range, which did happen, we would have to fail the run, rerun it, troubleshoot.
Yeah.
Question: how long were you trained, like the one you showed, making anchor slides?
How did they train me?
No, how long were you trained to make those?
Maybe 2 weeks, but it was every other day, so it wasn't that long. It took more work to be trained on the Triterus, just because there's so many aspects to the machine and the samples. There were so many different tests we were running. When I got there, clips were down, so I had to be trained on clips later. But on Triterus, I didn't just run the machine too. On Mondays, I had to do inventory, and we had this huge inventory, and it was hard. There's a lot to do with the Triterus, at least with the maintenance and everything. graders.
Well, for me, my lab had a education specialist, and she pretty much trained me over the course of a couple of weeks on each of the areas. She had a checklist that had everything that any person that ever works at Mayo goes over everything with me.
Everything at Mayo is like checklisted. It's
Yeah.
a completely structured
They-
facility. I've never seen anything like it.
They documented everything.
They document everything. You do severe training to be able to be, they don't let you go into work unless you're competent. Like the other intern in my lab, he doesn't speak, English isn't his first language, so he had a little bit of a harder time catching on. So they held him back a couple weeks longer before they let him go off on his own. Because we were treated technically as medical technologists, as we already had our degrees. We weren't treated as students. If we were here, you go, these are your tests, go. Like, no one else
We were
ran our
trained, and
tests.
then you just went off and did your thing. Anybody else?
Hey. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. So we have actually, I'm going to pass on the evaluation program. Please actually